Angie, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I will tell you that my expectation for this time is very different than the first time. So I was so nervous about our first visit, I call it, because I expected to have a lot of hate mail, a lot of backlash from publicly saying that this is my way of eating. And it was very, very different than what I expected. So that's a lesson learned.
Yeah, so I understand you got quite a lot of very positive messages and questions since our last interview. So that was some of those questions are the things we wanted to address today.
hmm
But just before we do, would it be possible, just for people that haven't seen your first interview, could you give us a brief summary of how you got into carnivore?
Sure, sure. I remember the day that I found a diagnosis for my sickness. I was in our RV on our property because I had begun to isolate because being in the house, it put me in the situation of having to eat with my family and explain why I was so sick. And it had been a long process over the last 2 years. And so I was laying on the couch and I was so sick. I just barely could get up and go to the bathroom. And I remember I was flipping through the TV and I wasn't even facing the TV. I was facing away from the TV because I had to lay on my side because my stomach was so swollen. And I remember hearing a lady describe her symptoms, and I thought, wow, those sound just like my symptoms. So I got the remote and I clicked on real quick because I wanted to read the description of what this show was. So it was intervention, and the description was a lady, homeless lady, living on the streets because she was addicted to meth. And what brought her there was a disease called gastroparesis. So I thought, wow, gastroparesis, that's just such a strange name, but it fit me to a T. And I knew in my heart that that's what it was. And I had researched everything. I had seen doctor after doctor. And Dave, I was at the end of my rope. I mean, the quality of my life was not good at all. And I had a loving family. I had been married, oh my gosh, 36 years. I mean, I had been married a long time. So it had nothing to do with that. It was just how physically sick I was. And so I got my Mac out and I began to research what gastroparesis was. And of course, when I went in to see the gastro doctor, he put me on a typical gastro diet, which is lots of fruits and vegetables, raw vegetables, fat free meat, no beef. And being I'm not the professional, obviously I followed his protocol because I thought I'll give him a chance and see how this goes. And I just began to get sicker and sicker. And so over the next, I would say 4 to 6 weeks, I knew it wasn't working for me. And so I'd reached out to my doctor and I said, I can't live like this. I said, is there anything we can do? So I was on the verge of either having a medical device inserted into my stomach that would signal my stomach to function correctly, or a feeding tube. And I knew I did not want either of those because I knew in my soul that this could be fixed in a more natural way. And my husband had been out to eat and had left a ribeye in the RV in our refrigerator, and I had eaten probably three-fourths of that steak. And I remember falling asleep and sleeping so well and waking up a few hours later, and I wasn't vomiting, I wasn't nauseous, I wasn't sick. And I thought, wow, could that possibly have some relationship to what I just ate? Now, how I feel, could that be possible? And it absolutely was possible. So I called my husband and I said, run by Publix and get me a week's worth of steak. And I said, don't tell anybody because this is so weird. I'm going to try just eating meat and seeing if I can get my life back. And that's what I began to do. And day by day, I began to get better and better and better. And now that's been about 7 years ago.
That's awesome. And your story resonated with so many people so well. I mean, you got hundreds of messages, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
Yeah, especially when your expectation was that, you'd get a lot of backlash.
Yeah, I was really, really scared. That's why I had never really publicly said it. I had really kept it under wraps because it was just such an odd thing. And I think another reason why I didn't tell it sooner was I wanted to have a little bit of history with this way of eating so that, I could really share what it had done for me. I'm not a doctor or nutritionalist. All I can tell you is this is what happened. The past 7 years, this is how I've eaten, and it has brought me to this place in my life that has just rejuvenated me. It's been miraculous.
Mm. Yeah. So, we were going to address some of those questions that you'd received through the messages. What kind of questions did people want to know?
Well, first of all, I thought I was gonna just answer 5 or 10 or 15, and I think I emailed you and I said, Dave, is there a way to say thank you to everyone that's commented on this video? Because it was so kind and just so gracious of everyone. And so I start going through the messages and I'm responding and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's 20, that's 30, that's 100. And but I think what struck me was the overall theme of the questions, and they all centered around, has this way of life helped you manage your life better? Has it made your life better? Angie, is the quality of your life better? Has it helped you, man, stress in your life? Life is hard. Even when your life is good and you're healthy, life is still hard, right? And so, has this way of eating helped you with that? And then, of course, there was the physical questions. How has this transformed you physically? And I really don't think that we can separate, the physical from the mental, because it's all so intertwined. And when you're so sick and you're so hopeless, and that was another common theme, was just desperation, hopelessness at the end of my rope. I expected so much negativity, and everyone was just like, if you just throw us a thin, thin rope with a knot on the end, we'll accept anything. We'll listen to anything if you're just willing to tell it, which shows how desperate people are. And so I began to answer those, and it seemed to be, there was a large group that were in their mid 30s. They're in their jobs, they're now married, they have children, and their life should be full. And what they find is their life is full in the wrong kind of way. I had a mom tell me that, my husband and I cannot take on one more thing. I mean, it will literally break us. If we have to follow some strict protocol or special grocery list, we it, we will just be done. And I remember I would always tell my kids, if I was overwhelmed, I'm just spent. I have nothing left. Leave me alone. And so that is basically what these people were saying. They were just saying, we are spent, we're done, we cannot accept anything else because it's so bad. And so, they were just looking for the beauty and simplicity. And so, when you are that sick, you don't feel like going to your kid's ball game, or taking a walk with your partner in the afternoon, because all you can manage is to just fall into the couch and just hope that something changes.
It does seem like, when people get to the point where they're considering carnivore, it's when they're at the end of their rope like that, right? And
Hmm.
certainly that was where it was for you, yeah?
Yeah,
Um,
it definitely was.
yeah. And so, like, this has made things easier for you to manage, like, just related to those questions, like, it's made your life better, it's made you feel good about the future?
Oh, absolutely. And I began texting with one of the girls, and I said, you know, there's beauty in the simplicity of it. I feel like we were meant to eat this way. It's everything we need. It's not complicated. It brings clarity to mind, almost like you're fasting. And if you've ever fasted, you understand what I'm talking about. So eating this way, it clears your mind. And she was, wanting to take notes of what she buys at the grocery store, what she can, what she can't eat. And I said, Listen, honey, just go to the grocery store. You don't need a list, and go to the meat department and buy whatever looks good to you and just start eating meat. I'm not going to tell you how much to eat, how little to eat, when to eat. I'm just going to tell you that if you begin to eat this way, your body will begin to repair itself. And there's no secret sauce, there's no secret, rhyme to it. You just need to eat this way. And for me, so much of my time was consumed by worrying about eating because I knew the next meal that was coming was going to put me in an episode, and I knew what that meant. So the anxiety of that, I had never been a nervous person, I had never been a fearful person. I'm a person of strong faith, but it had gotten to the point where I had allowed fear to come in when it came to food. So even the thought of food, I would become anxious. I would break out in a sweat. My thinking would be off. And so I knew that there was a relationship between managing the stress of my mind and the result of what it did to me physically, and the simplicity of it as well. There's no more worrying about what I'm going to eat. Now I can go with my family and I know ahead of time what I'm going to eat. I can go out to a restaurant. So it really has brought the pleasure of eating back to me that had been lost. And that was something, another correlation with a lot of these messages was, the beauty of community and sharing a meal together and eating together had become so contentious because everyone is so sick. And so I shared with her, I said, it's given me my life back, even with my relationships. And they weren't bad, but they certainly were missing something. Now I can go and I can sit down and enjoy, the pageantry of eating. It's just a little different way than the person next to me is eating, but there's not the anxiety or the fear that there was before.
Yeah. Yeah. So just on one of those questions that you mentioned where you're being asked kind of, what should I buy? What should I, can I eat this? Can I eat that? Those kind of questions. I feel like that's something that a pattern we get into as humans. We feel like we need to have a plan for doing things. Like we need to follow the steps because of all the dieting advice, all of the advice about anything that we're subjected to throughout our lives. We have this kind of marketing advice, basically marketing,
Hmm.
telling
True.
us you need to do these things, step one, step two, step three, to be successful in life, to be successful in this area, especially with dieting. And so it's
Sure.
very hard for us to get into a mindset of it doesn't have to be that difficult. Just go and buy the meat. Just eat the meat and you'll feel better.
Exactly. And, I was hesitant by using the word carnivore because I had not been in this space until I had met you. And so once we visited, I then kind of went online and started seeing and listening to different people, and I realized that it's very hard for me as a consumer to trust someone that this way of eating has changed their life if right behind it they've got something to sell me. Instantly, my wall goes up and I'm thinking this is about money. And you have to be a real person of character when money's involved because there's a lot of money to be made with these kind of things. And so I was very cautious with that because, like you said, there's always something that you have to do or something that you have to buy. And so through those messages, I said, you need to buy what tastes good to you. If you like hot dogs, if you bacon, pork, whatever tastes good to you, you need to buy it. You don't need me. All you need me to say is it worked for me. And it is this simple, beautiful thing that you eat meat and you eliminate everything else. And very quickly you will start feeling better. And I think that is a lot of the draw to the people that heard the first interview. I'm not selling anything. I didn't give them a protocol. It's just it's very simple and it works.
Yeah. I kind Just personally, I feel like there's a little bit of a double-edged sword though, because I feel like it's easier for people to trust you when you're not selling anything. It's just like I'm not
Maybe
selling
so.
anything. Just go to the supermarket, buy the meat, and eat the meat, and that's all you need to do. Like, you don't need to buy anything special from me. No programs, nothing. But it's a little bit of a problem because people get so used to that feeling of, well, you need to give me a plan.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so when there's no plan, it kind of feels like you're no longer holding on to the edge of the swimming pool anymore. You're out in the middle of the pool and no one's probably taught you how to swim.
It's true. But I think there's a flip side to that. I think there's a side of, drive it like you stole it. So I think there's freedom. We're, I don't want to say like a herd of cattle because we love to eat cattle, but I just feel like everything all day long in our life, we're being told what to do, how to think, where to go, what to do. And for me personally, I think there's great freedom and just being told to just go buy meat and start eating it. And I think intuitively, your body will begin to tell you what kind of meat it prefers, how much meat, how little meat. That's a very exciting thing to me because I think everything is so restricted today or restrictive. And we've kind of lost that independence of taking our own lives back. And, I always talk to our kids that, your voice and your opinion is just as valuable as anyone else. Someone that has a degree, a doctor, listen to him if he's diagnosing you. But if he begins to talk about relationships or any other subject, your voice is just as valuable. And you have been given a brain and you can state how you think about things, right? We don't have to be led around by what everyone else says. And I think that's how I want my story to be different is I want people to see my story and run with it and eat meat, but I don't want to set up some model that they have to follow because I think that I would rather give them freedom in making their own choices and regaining their own life and nothing to do with me other than sharing my story, right?
Yeah, and when you say it like that, like everyone can just do their own thing, and it doesn't need to be like following the plan. Of course, it makes sense when you really think about it deeply, because no other species out there needs to do this. Like there's no giraffes out there going, "Hang on, which trees do I need to go to?" Or no one's told me this one. It's they just eat.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think we've kind of been programmed that we need to be led, we need to be told what to do. And I know my generation, we kind of like doing our own thing. And I will tell you though, I see with the younger generations, our kids are 35 to 22, and that was one of them that just interrupted our talk calling through. But they're not fooled easily. They do not appreciate being fed a lie, and they are very strong in their mind to say, I am smart enough to research this and make my own decision. The only thing that I think becomes worrisome is when data is given to these kids when there's money involved. I really don't want to hear data that someone has kickbacks coming in for producing that data. But this younger generation, I think they want to take their lives back. They want to feel good. They don't want to be stressed out at 25 years old. And my profession, my job is I'm a child advocate for children in foster care. And I had one of my foster boys say, Miss Angie, I have been having nightmares and I'm not sleeping. And he said, I have started turning all my devices off an hour before I go to bed. I light a candle, and he said I go outside and sit in the grass, or I think about someplace I want to go and visit. So here's a 15-year-old realizing that he is overstimulated and he needs to calm down and have more simplicity. And then I went to visit one of my babies at a place that we had placed this child. And in this baby's crib, there was a thing that hung over the top. There was a thing to each side of the crib. One played music, one had flashing lights, one was circling in the sky. And I thought, when did we move from allowing a child to entertain themselves and be able to just sit in quiet? So I think that's another side, and the beauty of this is there's not a lot of fluff. Like you said, there's not a protocol. We just The simplicity is beautiful to me, and I feel like it you take your freedom back.
It must have been extremely stressful for you at the time where, like, every meal was like, "This is gonna be a nightmare."
It
Um,
really was.
how once you had that meat and you realized that eating meat didn't cause the same problems, um, did it take you a while to a kind of acclimatize to not having problems after eating? Like, I remember when I had pain in my knee, and once that pain went away, it took me a really long time to get used to the fact that the pain wasn't there. Like, if I started running, my body would kind of go into this kind of panic, like, it's gonna hurt, even though
Yeah.
it didn't. So, did you have a period of time where you'd start eating and feel like, oh no, this is gonna be bad?
Actually, I did, and how it presented itself with me is I felt like I had a lump in my throat, and I realized that, I'd let the fear set in from the previous, this previous time when I was so sick, and it got to where when I would chew, I couldn't swallow, and if I did swallow, I felt like there was a lump in my throat and I was choking. So I went for a swallow test, and of course there was nothing wrong. And driving home, I thought, you know what? My mind was clear, and the rest of my body was well, and I began to just think rationally, like, what do you think is bringing this on? I thank God I had the ability to think clearly like that. When you're so sick, you cannot think through and muddle through even the most simplest tasks, because your brain is in rebellion because we're not giving it what it needs. And so I was driving and I pulled over and I thought, oh my goodness, I have allowed the anxiety and fear from being so sick. Now it's overcome me when I'm well. And once I acknowledged that, it was like I never had that issue again. So that's a real thing when you've been so sick.
And it kind of just goes to show that it's very easy for us to get conditioned into patterns.
Oh, yes.
And
Very
that
much.
works really well when you're a company that's got things to sell, and you can kind of people are already conditioned to be doing things like counting calories and all this kind of thing, right?
Yes. Oh, that was a big with all the messages. Well, how many calories? How many is too much? How many is not enough? And give me something. I mean, they were literally just like cravenous for me to give them something, some kind of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I said, I'm just not going to do that. If I know with myself, my weight has fluctuated over the past 7 years. So if I am gaining weight, I'm not eating enough fat. If my mentality is not quite as sharp as it should be, I'm not eating enough fat. um, so there's like an ebb and flow of it. So if I'm eating too low, I'm gaining weight. I have to eat enough to maintain being thin, which is like an oxymoron. It sounds so retarded, but it's true. And so I went in my notes on my phone and I just made like a standardized message, and that's what I said. I said, get your freedom back, take control of your life, and you decide what you want to eat moving forward. All I'm telling you is if you give your body the chance, God gave us this perfect food that will heal your mind, and just run with it. That's exciting to think about that. And another question was, do you cheat? Do you ever, fall off the wagon? And I think before, when I was dieting in my younger years, when we were either counting calories or, we were doing the cabbage diet, if I veered or I cheated, it was like the end of the world. Now, if it happens, I have the hope that all I have to do is start eating my meat again tomorrow, and very quickly my health is restored again. So it's not the end of the world. So that is a wonderful relief, honestly, that side of it, because they ask about cheating.
Yeah. So I think the important thing that you touched on there is the path is always there. You always know that you all you got to do is start eating the meat again.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
And I
So
actually saw my doctor this past week, and all my numbers are perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. Here, 7 years in, so
right.
that's wonderful.
So when you say perfect, your cholesterol like is not something that gave your doctor a heart attack?
No, no, my sugar, my cholesterol, just every, they do the CBC, the, what is the one where they test your sugar over 3 months? Yeah, everything is, it just is
Oh,
perfectly normal.
the HbA1c.
Yes, 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 yes. He's like, wow. He's been my doctor for a long time. He said, oh my gosh. He said, Angie, you've 10 years has been taking off of you. What are you doing? And he's also a personal friend of mine. And so I was able to share with him. He knows, how I'm eating. And he said, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way to eat. I can't tell you that way. He said, but kudos to you because it's working.
So was he was your doctor when you were having the gastroparesis?
He was, yes, he's my primary. So
Right.
he
So
saw all of that.
yeah, so he's known all those challenges that you've gone through. So he must
Yes.
be really happy for you.
Oh, he's like, I can't get over it. I mean, I was going to have a handicap sticker placed in my car, and I'm thinking, God, I'm so sick. I have to park up right by the door of a business. I mean, that is how sick I was. And we had just started talking about all these different things in the feeding tube. And he said, to look at you today, he said, it's miraculous. And from being a doctor, that was quite the compliment for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. It's nice to have a doctor that you can actually talk to and will listen to you and is not going to cut you off with, yeah, 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 but all that fat, that saturated fat's going to kill you.
Yes, yes. And I've had that said to me, but I think he's a rare doctor because I think he looks at me sitting there in front of him, and how can you deny, the test, my demeanor, my energy level, I people on Instagram that were messaging me, they're in their mid 30s and go for an afternoon walk because they are so tired and they're sick and they're mentally spent. And I literally have to, a couple hours before it's time to go to bed, I have to consciously make an effort to either busy myself with something, because if I'm not, I'm up moving, I'm doing things. It's just, it's rejuvenated my spirit and my energy, really.
Nice. Um, so when you got started, you kind of just fell into eating this way. So there was no kind of, I guess, transition period or anything like that. Yeah. It was just like, I feel better this way. I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, it was full speed. It was 0 to 90 for sure. And
Yeah.
over the years, I had heard of keto, and which is wonderful. But I'd never heard the word carnivore. All I knew was that when I ate the meat, it made me feel so good, and I didn't understand, is this too much? Is this not enough? Of course, I questioned myself. I thought, my God, am I killing myself? Am I gonna, I because what we've been told. And so I had moments like that, but I tell you, those moments were far outweighed by the good moments, by the feeling good, by the getting, my body composition has changed. I weigh more than I weighed in my 20s, but yet my body composition is different and my skin's different. And I thought, if it's that bad, why am I seeing these results? Because I could always lose weight in the past. That, women can lose weight. We all can lose weight. As far as seeing the side of, your skin health and your hair and your energy level, it's just so diversely different. can't even compare it to a diet. And I hate to say diet. That's why I always say my way of eating, because it's not restrictive and the results are not just weight loss.
If like someone's getting started now, would you just say just do what you can, just get the meat and do what you can, or is there any other advice you'd give them?
Well, I think usually nausea is a big one because your body is not used to metabolizing fat. So that's a big, I think, problem for people just starting out, and it can make them very discouraging. Being nauseous is not fun at all. So there's little tricks like putting salt on your tongue, or cutting your fat back. But I think when you're as desperate as these people are, I just think it's better just to go all in. I'm just like I said, drive it like you stole it. If you really want to get your health back and your life back, don't waste any time, because obviously what you've been doing is not working. Not that it's any of your fault. It's not your fault at all. But I just say jump in and do it. Buy what tastes good to you. And another thing, cravings. Cravings are so different now that I've been on this way of eating than they were on any other diet before. My cravings remained exactly the same no matter what diet I was on. So now, this way of eating, the cravings are very different. They even call them a craving. I would say I acknowledge that a cake looks good or a muffin looks good. I can acknowledge it looks good, it smells good, but I don't have the drive to eat it. That is just completely gone. I don't have the taste in my mouth like before.
Yeah, and it's such a strange thing, right? So you
It
like
is.
you go from like salivating when you see something to going, yeah, I can appreciate how nice that looks, but I don't have any connection to it anymore.
Yes, and apparently that's how you feel on all these new weight loss drugs, Ozempic. They said that, the things that used to taste good to you just doesn't taste good to you anymore. And I kind of equate that with this way of living. It's just, I'm sure it would taste good, and there have been times when I've like taken a bite of a pound cake that my mom made from scratch, and it tasted wonderful. But I was able to put that piece down. Before, I wanted the whole entire pound cake. And the same way with chips, which I hear that basically they're designed for us to want more anyway. And it would be impossible to just eat one. But since I've been eating this way for so long, I can eat a few chips and they taste good. They do. But I don't want to devour the entire bag.
Finally finding that stop button, or just naturally having that off switch, it's really nice.
Dave, what does your day of eating look like?
Typically OMAD, it's just like 8 eggs and about a pound of ground beef or a steak. Yeah. And that could be breakfast, have it, or it'll be early afternoon, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I am starting to try a few different things. So I'm trying some raw milk, raw kefir, because I do love heavy whipping cream in my black coffee. That is one of my treats. I love the whole process of it, getting up in the morning and having my cup of coffee. And I can drink it black, but I certainly prefer it with heavy whipping cream. So I've reached out to a local farm here, so I'm going to try to start making my own heavy whipping cream from raw milk. So I am not a real big hamburger eater. I've never really liked hamburgers unless it's on a bun. But I have tried. I don't know if it was you or someone else said frying your hamburger meat up with your eggs, and that was delicious. I'd never thought about that. But I wondered how you ate. Now, what about drinks? Are you water only? Do you have any other kind of drinks?
Water and black coffee.
And black
Yeah.
coffee. So no
Yeah.
dairy?
I no, dairy, I'll have butter, but other than that, it doesn't agree with me.
I
Yeah.
think people with issues like with your knee and arthritic type stuff, I think that it can, cause you to relapse, or so I've heard.
The simpler the better. And that's one of the things I like about it, is it's just so simple. There's no faffing around. There's no messing with things. There's no 3-hour shopping trip looking for lots of color and all this kind of thing. It's just 5 minutes
Yes.
in the supermarket and 5 minutes to prepare the meal, and then the rest of the time is yours for whatever you need to do.
It is. And, so many messages were talking about seed oils and this and that. And I said, don't get distracted by all these things because you easily can get overwhelmed. And you do not need to be overwhelmed when you're sick and your mental capacity is not that great anyway. So I said, do not worry about any of that. If you have to get 2 quarter pounder patties at McDonald's, get them because there's something magical in the meat, no matter really what it's cooked with. It's remarkable. And I said there's no place really that you can't go to a restaurant and get something to eat. Even at kids' ball games, they always sell hot dogs. You can always get a hot dog. The theater, you can always get a hot dog. So don't complicate it and don't take on too much at one time because we are looking for our quality of life. We're looking for simplicity and just taking back our own freedom. And this way of eating will give it to you if you allow it and can get out of that mindset. Like you said, it's a hard thing to push through.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you make a good point there, about when you're getting started. There might be some preservatives or something in the hot dog that you get at the theater or the ball game or something like that. But the point is, you're still doing better than you were before, right? And when you're getting
Exactly.
started, you just need to be doing better than you were before. And it's every step you move in that direction is positive. But you don't have to be perfect on day one.
And you don't have to have a lot of money. I mean, if you just get your grocery store app and whatever is on sale, that's what you eat that week. My steak preference is a ribeye. That is what I would choose to eat every single day. But I go from a ribeye to a New York strip and then, whatever hot dogs are buy one get one free. So if you just shop the sales and you're not nickeling and diming at the grocery store and buying a lot of stuff that you end up throwing away. How many people clean the refrigerator out once a week and they've got all this food in the trash because it wasn't eaten? Just start there, and it doesn't take a lot of money. It is very, very doable if you just, like I said, shop the sales and just eat what's on sale that week. You don't have to eat grass fed. I will tell you, I do not like a grass fed hamburger patty. I don't like the taste of it. And like I said, I'm in the South. I have access to all of this stuff. I do like a grass fed ribeye, but not hamburger meat. So even that becomes a preference that you will learn what you like and what you don't like.
Again, it becomes intuitive. It becomes like it doesn't have to be a plan. It's just eat what makes you feel good.
And when you're full, we feed babies and they know when to stop eating. They don't just eat 12 bottles, because we put it in their mouth. They're like, no, that's enough. And if you give your body the ability, it will tell you. There's days I might eat in the morning and a New York strip in the afternoon. And then the next day, I may only eat 4 or 6 ounces. But it's my body's telling me what I need. And it also depends on what I'm facing in my life at the time. I feel like fat is so important for mental health for myself, not from a medical standpoint, but from my experience. If I've got something difficult coming up, if I got a trial with one of my kids or, something deeply emotional, I will increase my fat that week. And I find my ability to handle those emotions and handle those situations are so much easier. It's like I can face them and then I can leave them and go on with my life. Before, it would be something that would put me under for a week on an emotional level. And the fat allows my brain to do what it's supposed to do. And, we manage what's in front of us and then we walk away and we leave it. We don't take it with us. So there, beauty in the fat there.
Yeah, beauty in the fat. Yeah,
Yep.
that's nice. So Angie, if people want to reach out to you, how can they get in contact?
Through YouTube, I only have about 5 videos on there, and I'm still trying to figure out how to upload our first video together and maybe upload this one, and then through Instagram.
No worries. Well, I'll link to those in the show notes. Angie, thanks for coming back on and sharing more of your story and experience. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave.